Hey there, church. How are you this morning? We are continuing this Easter series called At Home with Jesus, and right now we're getting a nice little illustration of what we're getting at. It's May 11th, and we're receiving a nice little snow here in Northeast Ohio. We would not expect this, but life is giving us other than what we might typically expect in all kinds of ways these days. So we are living at home with all kinds of uncertainty. And this morning it's partly weather uncertainty. This was our topic in worship. If you joined us on Sunday, at home with Jesus in our uncertainty. And part of the thing about that topic is that we are tempted to make our home in uncertainty. That we feel like the uncertainty is our dwelling place. And when that happens, we are putting our thoughts more on the future than in the present. The only time you can actually be certain of anything, really, is right in the present moment, in what you're touching, in what you're seeing, in what you're smelling, in what you can control, which is how you are responding to what's going on in the present. So we took that up on Sunday with a story from Acts about the Apostle Paul's time in Corinth. The Apostle Paul had all kinds of ups and downs. He would go from one place to another, never quite sure how he was going to be received. He had some things that he was pretty sure he would do, like he would go to the synagogue, as he did in Corinth, but he didn't know how the message of Jesus would go in the synagogue. For sure, in some places, he had some success. People believed in Jesus, as some people did. The leader of the synagogue believed in Jesus in Corinth, but he also received opposition when he went to the synagogues, opposition also from people who lived in the town. So Paul got a mixed reception in Corinth, but some things happened in Corinth that really mattered to Paul's ministry. One is that he found some friends with whom he could work. And so Paul set up a tent making shop in Corinth. When we were in Greece a couple of summers ago, we visited ancient Corinth and saw the spot, and it's all ruins now, of course, but saw the spot where Paul would have had his tent making little stand, and it was pretty close to where Paul would have stood and had to receive the defense. He never actually got to make one because someone from the town council kind of stood in and said, that this guy hasn't really done anything wrong when people brought some charges against him, but saw that spot that was pretty close to where he would have sold his tent and was pretty close to where there were all kinds of temples to gods in the Greek god pantheon. So it was pretty interesting to see how Paul's daily life was a mix of work and surrounded by religion all over the place, and probably conversations about Jesus. So Paul, interestingly, had a life that was more than just event-based. And I may seem to be kind of wandering, but this goes somewhere. Some of the uncertainty we're living right now as the church, I think, is that our whole way of life for a long time has been pretty event-based, and rightfully so. It's kind of like Paul did. He went to the synagogue, and so our version of that is coming to worship on what we call our Sabbath, on the Lord's Day, the Sunday when God raised Jesus from the dead. But this has been a pretty event-based religion, Christianity, for thousands and thousands of years. And in modern times, some of the event-based stuff of the church has been programming. You come to a Wednesday event, you come to some kind of missions event, you come to some kind of children's programming event, and all of that, all of a sudden, is totally disrupted. We did not see this coming. So some of the uncertainty we're dealing with right now in the church, and I'm really feeling it, is what kind of life do we have when we are knocked out of this event-based in-person life? And I think in a way, the kind of life we have is the sort of life that Paul ended up with in Corinth. That he did have some gatherings with people who would listen to him about Jesus as the Messiah. But a lot of his daily work and a lot of his daily faith happened in synagogue, or rather happened in the marketplace. It happened with conversations just around town with people. Paul stayed in Corinth for a year and a half and really got to be a known presence. So this is really instructive to us as our life is turning to more of a daily grind kind of faith. If your faith was based on having certain events that you would go to and kind of consume, I wonder if you feel like your faith is kind of struggling if it doesn't make sense to the daily grind and we don't know how to integrate prayer and practice of God's presence and all of that in the daily grind, we might feel kind of lost. And even if we do know how to do those things, we still might be kind of lost in these days. So that brings us to the tool that I suggested. I'm going to send out with this email 8 practices that I received from my spiritual director, who received them in turn from a conversation she had via Zoom with spiritual directors worldwide about how to navigate this crisis. 8 different practices for receiving these days as holy and God-filled, even if we don't entirely like them. And what strikes me is that each of the practices, I really hope you check them out, each of the practices is somehow an entrance into the present moment that dials our minds down in all of the racing that they can experience about the future and the what ifs, and we're just not sure, and the dread and the fear that happens when we live too much in the future and not enough in the present. So I encourage you not only to take part in the at-home group that will happen Wednesday at 7 o'clock on Zoom, but also to pick up a couple of these practices as a way of claiming God as present and finding in the present moment enough concrete certainty for not what's going to happen, but how we can respond and live with the regular stuff of life. This is the way faith is going now, and maybe it's the way God always meant faith to go. Some things for us to consider in these days, and I'm walking in them with you.